Not too much time. Daily Rambam for Tuesday, Tes Cheshvan Tafshin Pei Aleph, the second Perek of Hilchos Shabbos. Yesterday we learned about the Etzem, the Halacha, that you have to rest on Shabbos, you can't do Malacha. We learned about Chayev, Pater Avalaser, Mutter, Einei Chayev Klum, all the different terms. We learned about a Davar Shein Miskaven versus the Psikreshe. We learned about Malacha Shein Tzarech L'Gufa. We learned about Malachas Machshavas. We learned about the Shir, that there's a minimum for each Malacha. You automatically, you're Chayev, you do the minimum. We learned about Shnaim Shasuv, to do it together. We learned about Mekalkel, if you're doing something but you're trying to damage. And we learned about doing something partially on purpose, partially not. Now we're moving on to Perek Beis, which is all about Pikuach Nefesh. So first we start with the basic din of a Chayla Sheyesh Boi Sakana. Halacha Aleph, the Chuyi Shabbos Eitz Sakanas Nefashos K'Shar Kol Mitzvahs HaMitzvahs. Shabbos, just like every other mitzvah, is pushed aside when there's a matter of Sakanas Nefashos, life is in danger. L'fichach, Chayla Sheyesh Boi Sakana. If you're someone who's ill and there's a danger involved, you do whatever he needs on Shabbos, following the instructions of a professional doctor of that location. What if it's not a certainty, it's a doubt? What if one doctor said one thing and the other said the opposite? Then we still desecrate the Shabbos. Because it doesn't matter if it's a vadi or a suffix. A suffix is also Deicha Shabbos. Malka Mishnah says, what if there's more than two doctors involved? What if there's a whole teams of doctors? So that's in Hilchos Shvisas also Yom Kippur. If you look over there, it says that if mixas say tzarech and mixas say ain't tzarech, then you follow the Rav or you follow the Bekiim, etc. We'll get to it there when we get to it. The Kesef Mishnah points out that Rambam uses the lashon Dechuya Hi Shabbos, and he says when it comes to Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur by Korban Pesach, when you bring the Korban Pesach with Tumah, so there's a whole discussion in the Gemara: is it Dechuya or is it Hutra? Dechuya means that we're ignoring it, but it's still sort of present, and maybe you still leave the tzitz to be mechaper, or is it Hutra? And he says, it would seem it's similarly the same machlekes for Shabbos, and the Rambam used the word Dechuya, not Hutra. Now the Rambam is going to teach us that, yeah.
But by fast days, you also use that term Deicha.
Yeah.
So it means to push off. It means
that's always the term Deicha Shabbos, right? And so he's saying that there's significance to that term. We didn't say Matir Shabbos, we say Deicha Shabbos. And we're going to see further in the Perek some details that might relate to that. So right now he's going to say in Halacha Beis that Shabbos, we should essentially treat Shabbos like a weekday and not make cheshbonos. Let's see what the Rambam says. Amadu b'yem HaShabbos should tzarech lekach v'kach shmeini yom. And let's say on Shabbos they said, okay, he's going to need a certain treatment for 8 days. So we don't say namtin ad erev. Let's delay the treatment till this evening. So that way we avoid, if we start today, the 8th day is going to be next Shabbos. We're going to desecrate 2 Shabbos. Let's try to minimize it and delay it so that way it'll be from Sunday to Sunday instead of from Shabbos to Shabbos. Don't say that. You start today with your Shabbos. And if you have to desecrate 100 Shabbos, you do whatever you have to do. Because man should start as long as he needs it, and there's a sakana involved, or even a doubt, as we said, you're machal. You light the candle, you extinguish the candle, you slaughter, you bake, you cook, you heat up hot water, whether he needs to drink it, whether he needs to be washed. The rule is Shabbos for such a person. We treat it like a weekday for everything that he needs. However, later on, we're going to see that sometimes you do make a cheshbon. It's not a complete carte blanche, free for all, do whatever you want. Halacha Gimel, and to really to emphasize how important it is to be Mechal Shabbos to save a life. When you do these things, you don't send the guy to do it, or the children, or the slaves, or the women. In fact, it's actually going to have a downside. They're going to think Shabbos isn't so great. See, you can go do things on Shabbos if you have to. Go ahead. Yeah, never Al Tereba on Yom Kippur. Exactly. And again, he says we don't tell the women to do it. Specifically, the concern being that they're going to get the wrong message. And you're not allowed to have any delay. I don't want to get around. I'm a little nervous. I don't want to do the chil. No, you have to do it right away. Torah is supposed to result in life, not in death. So you have to do what it takes to keep them alive. Torah isn't here to create nastiness and horrible things in the world. It's supposed to be mercy and kindness and peace. That's supposed to be the outcome of Torah. And these heretics, that even this is Chilul Shabbos v'Aser, so presumably he means the Karaites, because they believe in Torah, but they might have their own opinion, and they might not have this exemption. So they have rules, and those rules result in death. That's what we can say about those people. Certainly, that's absolutely. That was probably closer to the peak.
They're still around today, carrots.
Yeah, there's still a bit of a community today, and there's shilas about intermarriage But in Mitzrayim there was a large community of Karaites, and the Rambam had to contend with them and deal with them. Now the Ramach, the Kasab Mishnah quotes the Ramach. He's one of the Yisraelim Mazasagas on the Rambam. He says the Rambam mentioned all four Goyim, Ktana, Avadim, and Nashim, and he says Kadesh Leitei Shabbos Kala Beinayim. It sounds like he's referring to all four, that they're going to not take Shabbos seriously. He says Goyim, I mean, they don't take Shabbos seriously at all. What do you mean they don't take Shabbos seriously? And also, according to him, what if a Chacham tells the guy to do it? Then it's okay. The Chacham is in charge. He says the Chacham should do it. So what if the Chacham asks the guy to help him? So then, if the Chacham are involved and it looks serious, so then it's okay. Then the guy won't get the wrong message. Atama Bar, he says, is because they're not Zirizim. The Goyim don't take life or Jewish life seriously. That's the reason why you can't use Goyim on Shabbos. And the Kesef Mishnah responds whatever his response is. And later we're going to see that actually when it comes to Chayil She'em by Sakana, then we actually do use Goyim, as we shall see. So often when something is slightly okay, so then you're going to use a Goy to do it instead of a Yid. Here is we don't want to use them. So that's unusual. Halacha Dalet and Hey. What kind of aches can we just sort of assume in advance entail a Sakana? Says in Dalet Acheshish Be'enov, someone has some kind of ache in his eyes. And by the definition of an ache is that there's either a discharge coming out of one or two of the eyes, or there's just tears streaming due to great pain, or there's blood streaming from the eyes, there's heat, there's fever, there's an infection. So that's automatically in the category of a chayla that has a sakana. You can automatically, immediately, mechalon all of us a Shabbos, you do whatever you need to do. Hey, it continues. If there's any internal injury, the mouth, the intestines, the liver, the spleen, all the internal organs, and also automatically, we don't have to get an expert to give his opinion. We know right away that it's a heavy, serious illness. So therefore, you can go ahead without asking. And if it's on the hand or the foot, we consider that to be an internal injury. You also don't need to ask an opinion. This is all from the Gemara. And if there's heat that is causing the skin, the flesh to shrivel, it's also an internal injury. And then, besides for those, any other one that the doctors say has a sakana, even if it's an external injury, then then that's where they step in, and that's when we listen to them. Otherwise, we can figure it out ourselves. The Maggid Mishnah quotes from the Chidusha Herashba that makkah shel cholol is one of the internal organs is ruined due to some kind of makkah or a bua, some kind of bubble, an infection or something. Right. But a boil, and that's to distinguish from a michosh. A michosh just means your stomach's hurting, something's hurting you, it aches. If it's just, if there's no known injury, if it's just an ache, that's what we're trying to distinguish here and say that it's not a makkah, you're not machal Shabbos, unless there's a michosh with a makkah. And that's what he quotes in the Rashba. There's actually a whole discussion. If the Maggid Mishnah may have been a Talmud directly of the Rashba, he was all the way back then. It's not, we don't know that much about him, though. Also, the Maggid Mishnah quotes from the Rambam that the way he makes a seder is that a makkah shel cholol, an internal injury, So we're saying that you don't need a doctor. So even if there's no Bekiyim, and even if the Chayla himself doesn't say anything, you still do everything you're supposed to do. The Machalim, the Rafus, your Machal Shabbos, you don't ask. However, if everyone knows that this particular illness is something that you can wait, if you happen to know that, you don't need Chil, then it's certainly usher to do it. And Kol Shekain, if the Chayla says or the doctor says that you don't need, then even if it's an internal injury, then you still can't go ahead and be Machal Shabbos. And if it's not an internal injury, then you ask the Baki or the Chayla, and you don't do Chil Shabbos. The default is you don't until someone says Tzarech. Now, nowadays, there's another metric of determining whether someone's ill, and that is taking their temperature. That wasn't the thing back then. But today it is, and there's a whole discussion as to how to use the temperature to determine. So I'm going to quote from, I think it's the Encyclopedia Refuus, as an entry on Shabbos, as an entry on temperature. So, running in the Gemara, you see this idea that heat, some of these examples might be suggesting that the heat is dangerous. Lav Dafke, it's exactly in the same sense as we understand temperature. So anyway, therefore, if you have a high temperature and you don't feel well and you haven't figured determined yet what the problem is, or even if it's not so high, but you know that it's, let's say, you know the person has the flu or something, and then you see even a slightly higher temperature, so then you're Machal Shabbos. This is based on Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the Igros Moshe. Let's say a person has a cold, something like that, he's a bit older, so he quotes from the Igros Moshe that starting from 102 degrees Fahrenheit for an adult, or an older person, that's when you start being Machal Shabbos. And if a person feels that he's in danger, then even if it's 101, you can start a little lower. Some say that even from 100 degrees you can be Machal Shabbos, but that's only D'Rabbanan. And usually it's not the temperature itself that's the problem. There's something else that's the real problem. Temperature is just an indicator. If the person really feels awful and we don't know what the cause is, we don't know the cause, so then we can consider Machedesh Yesh by Sakana.
Would that be a heter for taking?
And that's from the Tzais HaShulchan and from others.
Would that be a heter for taking aspirin?
Well, if we're saying he's a Machedesh Yesh by Sakana, so then
No, 100 degrees. I'm talking about.
if he feels especially awful, we don't understand what the reason is, and maybe even from 100, you might be able to take him to the hospital. I mean, I'm sure at this point.
No.
I'm sure at this point.
Aspirin.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aspirin.
Pasha does that. I mean, these are home remedies.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, surely.
Aspirin is a home remedy. You got permission from the doctor to take an aspirin?
Right.
It's a home remedy.
Right. There's other cheshbonos. The child, Rav Moshe had a particularly low temperature that people discuss it, even 100 for a child. Okay, so that is that. Moving on. Now that Rambam discusses aches, troubles that begin from interactions with creatures. You swallow a leech. You heat up water. So we heat up water. We do whatever you need because it's a danger. If he is bit by a rabid dog or by any of the crawling creatures that are deadly, I feel like you're suffering if it's a question, it's still so that's another example where you automatically know where something happened like that. So you know that it's a Chel Shesh Beisakana. Moving on now to the idea that you don't actually go ahead and do whatever you want. You can't just do unnecessary Chil Shabbos. So let's say they said that he needs a dry date. So in this case, 10 people ran. They all brought one each. So they're all pater. Even if one brought it after the next, even by this time he recovered. Everyone was when they went for the right reason. So we don't say, "Oh, my friend, turned out you're actually Machal Shabbos." No, you're pater. However, let's say you need two. You have two options: either two that grow individually, or three that grew together as one. So, So even though you need two, you cut the three that are attached to each other, and you end up with one more, but you only did one cut. You only cut once instead of cutting twice. So that way you're not cutting additionally. That's preferable. And anything like that. So here you see that it's not mamish like a weekday, and all right. Halacha test. What about can a healthy person also enjoy what they did for the chayla? They cooked for the sick person. He left over some. Also, a healthy person cannot eat the leftovers because maybe all right, let's make a meal for everyone. Can't do that. But if it was just shechting, it wasn't cooking, it was shechting. Then a healthy person could eat some of the raw meat. He can't cook it, but he can have the meat uncooked. Because here there's nothing additional that was done. There's a concern that we'll do extra. One animal. And then that's how the rule always works. Whether if it's something that could have been done without, then he can't have it. If it was automatic, then so the Maggid Mishnah says that the Farshim agree that Matzah Shabbos, then the healthy person can eat it right away. He doesn't have to wait the amount of time it would take to do it again. And the Rambam is just talking about Shabbos, so don't be medayik anything from the Rambam. Rambam was simply talking specifically about Shabbos. And he quotes the Gemara about the shechting, and a famous lashon of relatively Iyavsha the kazayas buster below shchita. How are you going to get a kazayas of meat without shechting a whole animal? And when he shechted, therefore he had in mind the chayla. It doesn't matter how many other people are around. He has the mind just the chayla when he shechted the whole animal. And then there's a Ravid here. The Ravid says that there has to actually be a sick person around that eats it that day. I guess maybe sometimes the sheikh needed to shecht then, but maybe the chayla wasn't actually around then. Whatever the case is, so the Maggid Mishnah explains because otherwise, then it's muktzah. If they didn't have any purpose, it wasn't actually used today, then it remains muktzah. That's the Ravid. But he says we hold that when we say that it's only muktzah if you were deicha the isser b'yadayim. So if you lit the candle on Shabbos, then mamish deicha the isser. That's muktzah. But like here, a case like here, you weren't deicha b'yadayim, so then it's mutter. So even though the behema was muktzah because of isser shchita, but you weren't deicha b'yadayim, so apparently the Rambam would disagree with the Rambam. Now move on to a chayla she'em b'sakana. Chayla she'em b'sakana, he's sick, but there's no danger. So then we could do stuff for him, but a guy has to do it. Ketzad. So for example, we tell the guy to do it, and he does it. To cook, to bake, to bring medicine from one place to another. And so kaichel means like what women put in their eye, but there's also a concept of doing it for refuah back then. Kaichel, by the way, essentially is alcohol. As we know, the word alcohol in English is actually al-kaichal. This word, that's the word in alcohol. It comes from Arabic, comes from Hebrew. So perhaps, essentially putting alcohol in his eye on Shabbos. So, the guy can do that. And if there's no malacha at all, he just needs errands, then he can do it. And the examples are malin oznayim b'Shabbos. So that's to put. Let's say someone has his jaw is not displaced, but dislocated. He has a dislocated jaw. So you can push it back in. Malin unkli, if he has some kind of cartilage in his heart that's in the wrong place, you have to pop it back. So that's something you could do. And if he has a broken limb, you can line it up, put the broken part back in line. And anything like that.
Just line it up together and tie it.
Here's just talking about putting it in place.
Snapping it in place.
Right. Cast is like a whole malacha, no? So the way the Maggid Mishnah sums it up is that every shvus is mutter for anything that's the rabban is mutter for a chayli she'em b'sakana because it still has the whole body is involved. He's lying in bed, So that's either a mir l'guy or through a yid. But if it's just Ever Echad, then there's no sakana at all. Then it's not even mutter for a yid, even if it's totally a shvus. So that's why, let's say the alcohol can only be a guy, even though it's only a shvus, because he just has a problem in his eye. But in a malacha gemura for a yid is never for Ever Echad, only for the entire body, unless the Ever Echad is sakanas nefashos. And there's more arichos on this topic, but that's that. Yoladas, now moving on to Yol, this woman who's giving birth, we're going to have a bunch of halachos on that. So she's going into labor. She's in danger. We have to desecrate the Shabbos. You call a midwife from place to place, even if she's traveling where you wouldn't ordinarily travel on Shabbos. You cut the umbilical cord, you tie it, and she needs a candle while she's crying out in pain. And now you light the candle. I feel assuming if she's blind. So why are you lighting a candle for someone who's blind? Psychologically, it helps her, even though she doesn't see. If she needs oil or something like that, you bring the whole Shabbos. If you do a shinoi, though, you make a shinoi. Let's say you're bringing something, you're carrying something. If the woman could tie it to her hair, so that way she's not carrying it properly, it's just dangling from her hair, that would be preferable. If you can't, via kedarka.
So you finally touched about the shit to do with the shit.
Right. So
why not when it's a sakonis mamash to do?
So the Maggid says that Ramban said that all tzarchei chayla, even if there's a chayla, there's a sakana, if you could do it with a shinoi, not to be machal Shabbos, you should do it with a shinoi, even if it delay, as long as it doesn't delay the chayla. But from the Rambam kuskomtois, that a chayla sheish b'sakana is not involved, is not included in the shinoi, because by sakanas nefashos he never mentioned anything about shinoi. He just said klal shel davar Shabbos l'gabe chayla sheish b'sakana nikachayil. So apparently, this is unique. That it's natural. Woman gives birth to labor is natural. But ein achas mi'elef me'samach masay, the famous line that 1 out of 1,000 don't die as a result of birth. So therefore, they were being more machmir.
It's not just Hilchos. Any chayla you should do it al deishinu.
But I'm only mentioning it here.
And this is also a double agagol.
Yeah, Dover Tivi. It's very natural for a woman to give birth. And this is the Shuvah Gizmaisha about can a person get in the car if the woman's going to the hospital, can someone else get in the car to make her feel good? And the answer is yes. Also, the going in a car isn't actually so bad. Now, what about a non-Jew? You can't do this for a non-Jewish woman, even if she pays. Even Eva, usually we could do things for Eva, here not, even if there's no Chil Shabbos. Why? The Gemara says, because here you can say that only people who keep Shabbos were Machal Shabbos. It's a deal. You have to keep Shabbos, and we'll be Machal Shabbos for you. You don't keep Shabbos, you're not going to be Machal Shabbos for you. Now they'll accept. It won't, I guess the Eva won't be so intense. But if the non-Jews are Ger Teishav, then we have a mitzvah to help them. But you still aren't Machal Shabbos. Halacha Yud Gimel. How long? How long are you considered a yod? From when the blood starts coming until she gives birth, for another 3 days, Shabbos, full Chil Shabbos, everything she needs. Whether she says she needs it or not. From the 3rd to the 7th day, she says I don't need it, then you're not machal. If she's quiet and says, sure, if she says I need Shabbos, then you're still machal till the 7th day. From the 7th to the 30th day, then we assume she doesn't have a sakana. Even if she needs, and you have to get a guy to do it. Now relating to lighting fires and washing, make a fire. Even in the summer, because cold is very dangerous for her. But you can't make medura for a regular sick person because it's not probably not, that doesn't relate to his sakana. Hikus dam and it's done. If the person let blood and then he felt cold, then medura then we even do it in the summer because they're Kabbalah. Gemara says it's a danger. You wash the child the Shabbos after he's born, the day he's born. After you cut the milk, even if you have to heat the water up on Shabbos, they used to use salt in those days to harden him. And you wrap him up. מפני שסכנה היא לא, אם לא יעשה לכל אלה, זה לא סכנה. אין חמר חיצוני לפני המילה, לאחר המילה, ביום השלישי למילה, בחמת שולחן בשבס, מפני הסכנה, we learned about this already in Hilchos Milah. Halacha Tazvav, what if she died? The Ish Yoshua Lamash B'Ramesav, she was in labor and she died. Even Sakam Shabbos over there, you can bring a knife even from the Shosarab. The current is crazy, you cut her open and try to save the baby. Shami Matzachana, maybe he'll be alive. She's suffering the Fashas Dechas Shabbos, because the Safek is Dechas Shabbos. Even for this child, I feel even though he doesn't never had a chazak of being alive, we're still trying to save him because it's a suffix. Now we're up to saving people from trouble. In general, whenever you hear this danger, you run. You don't ask permission. And the faster, the better. Okay, so you see a child falls in the ocean, you start casting nets to bring him up. You don't ask. If you heard that a child drowned, fell into the water, and he put out a net, and you only caught fish, you still potter. And it's potter miklum, meaning it's potter and totally no makas martis. Potter. If you were trying to get fish and you caught the child, so potter, but not potter miklum, I guess. You shouldn't have done what you did. I feel even if you didn't hear anything about it, however, since he saved the child, potter takes away the chiyuv. Even if you're fixing something, he falls into a well, you start taking parts out of the wall around the well. Even if you're fixing the wall in a certain way, that now you made a step. A child was locked inside. You break the door. Even though you're breaking wood now you can use the wood for something. Because what if the child is terrified inside? He's locked inside and he'll die. You start if there's a fire and you're afraid someone will be burned. You put out the fire. Even though you're making a path. The faster the better. You have to get permission. A lot of halachas here about being under a pile of bricks. We're not even sure if he's there. You still, it's a suffix, you go. You find him alive. Even if his brain was, his head was smashed and you can't recover. You still want to save him and let him live another minute. If they check though and he's not breathing, then you leave him alone, nothing to do. If the people on top are dead, you don't say, the people on the bottom are for sure dead. You still keep digging. Sometimes the top are dead and the bottom are alive. Now, what if you have a suffix like this? There's goyim and yidden in the yard. If there's 1,000 goyim and one yid, but now on the wall fell, you still are looking for that yid. What if you have a called a punish? But it's kavua. Even if one left and then he got buried, maybe it's kavua is mechza. But if they were all moving, and then one of them left, and then you don't look anymore. Because they all left at Chatzar, there's no more kavua here. Then it's Rav. But if the Rav is Yisrael, then even if called the Parish Mirav, it's still Rav Yisrael. If you're in the desert, you don't know what day Shabbos is. So you treat every seventh day as Shabbos properly. And all the other days, even that day where you're big and kiddush and Abdallah, you can only do whatever it takes to survive, so you don't die. You can't do more. So every day is maybe Shabbos. But you can keep track. This is a week since I left, etc. And then that day, you know for sure is not Shabbos. You didn't leave on Shabbos, and it's a week since you left. You just don't know what day you left. And every other day, you just do only what you need to survive. This is the famous halacha that Rambam used to quote. The Goyim are laying siege and bolis can mom and machal lands on Shabbos. If it's just money, then you're not machal Shabbos and you can't go to war. But you're a smuchel isfar, and if it's near the border, I feel like let's get time cash. Even if it's just a small matter, you go out to war and machal Shabbos. And certainly, if they actually came and it's life and death, then for sure you react appropriately. Whenever you do can join, let's say Shabbos should come and help. You can't wait for Matzah Shabbos. You can't delay. When you finish, you can go home with your weapons. Or else they might not want to come next time. If there's a boat in the ocean, it's being rocked around. Somehow there's a river, a city is being flooded. It's a mitzvah to go and try to save them wherever you can. Even if one guy is being chased by Goyim to be killed, then you have to save him. Even if a lot of malachas are involved, even if you have to start making weapons, go do that. And you scream and you daven or whatever it is, you make noise to help. But you don't cry out to Hashem over a plague. Hey, final halacha. You can start even 3 days before Shabbos to make a siege. Or maybe the opposite, maybe dafka 3 days. And you can have a war any day. Even on Shabbos, until you conquer it. Even though it's just an optional war. That you go till the end, even on Shabbos. For sure, it's a mitzvah. The whole story happened on Shabbos.